if you smell what The Rock is cooking.
Acknowledge me.
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
We are bad to the bone. Get it? Bad to the bone.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
I'll fight anybody. Who do you want? Just let me fight him.
Let me tell you something, Jim Ross.
Bigger power, yeah.
We got it for you.
We are the best of the best.
Woo! Wheeling dealing. Smart marks.
And that's the bottom line, cause Stone Cold said so.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Talk 'em into the building. I'm Greg. This is Adrian. This is Ida Lead. And as you know, this is a podcast we talk about the promo. That's all we do. We talk about the talkers, hype the hype man, and pontificate on the promo. That's what we do. Except today, we're going to hit you with a different episode. We're going to hit you another one of our Mount Rushmore episodes. Let me set the stage for what our Mount Rushmores are. We love to argue about the Mount Rushmore, whether it's NBA, where does LeBron fall, where does Michael fall, where does Kobe fall, all that kind of stuff. We love to argue all the time about who's your Mount Rushmore professional wrestling. But we're not going to talk about the best wrestler or whatever. We're going to talk about a totally different subject today. But our goal with the Mount Rushmores is to bring four things. Each of us brings one, and then we discuss the last one to figure out what are we going to put on there for our fourth one. If you don't know, recently we did one of our Mount Rushmore of WrestleMania matches. So we each brought a match, and then we had to discuss the last one and come to a conclusion as to what falls on that. So go back into the archives, check that out right here on the YouTube channel or wherever you're listening to us right now, intothebuilding.com. Hit that subscribe button. So today, the fellas don't know what I'm bringing. They don't know the subject. And I was like, what can we bring? We got to bring something off the wall. We can't just bring the traditional best wrestler, best tag team. We'll get there one day. It's kind of like the, in Fast and Furious, if sometime they're going to get to Tokyo. It took them 17 different movies to get there, but they finally get to Tokyo, right? So we're going to talk about wrestling's greatest what-ifs.
Okay.
It could be a talent. What if this person didn't get hurt? What if this person happened to have a different timing when they hit the scene? It could be any kind of what if. Now, I'm going to take one off the table because this is where I got the idea for this one. Recently, look, y'all, we all know we listen to podcasts, we listen to all kinds of other media about pro wrestling because that's what we do. I was listening to Chris Van Vliet with Mr. Ken Kennedy or Ken Anderson. And I've never been a big Ken Anderson fan, but I was like, all right, cool, would be a good listen. And during that, they talked about being the biggest what if. What if he didn't get misdiagnosed with an injury? What if he didn't get caught up in the drug scandal? What if? Because there's certain pushes that got taken away from him, which is very interesting. He got misdiagnosed with an injury where he was supposed to get the title. And then that's why his Money in the Bank briefcase got taken away. Later on, I didn't know this. He got caught up in that drug scandal that came up. He got suspended. He was supposed to be Vince McMahon's son in that angle.
I do remember.
That's right, yeah.
And ends up being Hornswoggle. So, kind of thinking about some different what ifs. I have one. I'm not going to bring it to you yet. I know I kind of just hit you guys with this. So, out of lead, I'm going to come all the way to the West Coast out there in L.A., home of the Dodgers, where you stole Freddie Freeman from us Braves. But that's okay. We'll give him to you.
Dog world, brother.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. It's all about that green. He paid a lot more taxes out there, though. That's him. That's a him problem. But there you go. I'm going to come to you. What would be your biggest what if?
All right. Well, man, it's a tough one because I can think of all these instances of wrestlers that they had a chance. They just maybe through timing, maybe through just just the wrong era, being born into the wrong era. So I'm gonna give you some of my possibles, and I'm gonna give you the one I'm gonna go with first. So
Okay.
biggest what if for me, one of the bigger what ifs would have been when Malenko, Guerrero, when Perry Saturn, where the whole crew came over, right? They did like the jump, right? And they all settled into whatever gimmicks. Obviously, Eddie having the greatest impact after a second run, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're thinking of stars that were not homegrown in WWE, but had the potential to be incredible superstars under the WWE umbrella. The one I can think of that had the missed opportunity, although he still did great things, is Rob Van Dam.
Mm.
And if we go back to the hype of the one night stand and the eventual return match at this other one night stand where he has the match with Cena, there's a big to do just these past couple of weekends where there's that famous sign that says if Cena wins, we riot, right? And down to the point that Cena actually signed that fan sign, right? It's a monumental sign. It should be, if there's ever like a pro wrestling a true Hall of Fame that's combining everything, that belongs there, right? But what happens right after that, right? He's caught.
Mm-hmm.
He's arrested. And we won't get into the details behind that, and it's a different era, it's a different time. But you wonder if WWE is in a different place today, if they are willing to roll with the PR hit, right? Because they've rolled with worse at this point. What does a world where Rob Van Dam is a premier star, a superstar at that in WWE, how does that change the trajectory for everything that we knew since? We're also talking about the doldrums of 2006,
Yes,
2007, dare say 2008. If we really want to push, we can go to the 2010s even, right? When realistically, it was a weird time, right? We have a lot of lapsed fans, a lot of fans that just came back on from that time because of the fact that we were entering an era where it became the guest host era. But anyway, I won't sidetrack into that. But what does Rob Van Dam as a premier athlete against a whole litany of young guys coming up, right? He's at the upper echelon of his career, right? He's incredible shape, you know. You can argue, he always talks about in that famous shoot interview about Shawn Michaels saying something kind of double crossing, almost like, "Oh, I didn't know you could talk. I didn't know you can cut a promo." I was like, "Yeah, I could cut." And if you've listened to Rob Van Dam, I mean, he used to have like a comic book store out here in California. He had podcasts. He was super ahead of the game, right? He's always had an online presence. So, props to him for always kind of being a step ahead. But you wonder, what would those matches have looked like, right? We'd be talking to him about him in the same breath to me as a Guerrero. Not that, but just Guerrero had that breakout moment, right? And I wonder, what does that breakout moment look for a Rob Van Dam, who ultimately is Mr. ECW, right? He encapsulates what's that era for, and what would that have looked like as maybe a Mr. WWE, not a solely a Mr. ECW. So that's my contention, just to get the night started, for a Mount Rushmore of what ifs. Although he did have some success, so can't discount that.
Nice.
I like
That's
that.
interesting. That's a good one. That's because it does change the trajectory, right? It changes the whole ECW show. It changes that whole. Does Paul Heyman stay? Does he stay does he stay WWE champion? Does he just transition to ECW champion? That's very interesting. And even how does, I mean, there's such a ripple effect, right? How does that affect Big Show, Lashley? I mean, all the guys who came after him.
Punk.
Yeah, Punk. Yeah.
How does it affect Cena? Like, that would have been a long-standing feud. Like, for how many of those Randy Orton Cena matches will we not have gotten if Rob Van Dam was around? That's a good one. I like that one.
Nice. That is a good one. That's a nice throwback. Very something we got to really ponder about. We could unpack that for a long time.
Hell yeah.
Playing that what if game. All right, so Adrian, gonna come to you. Give me a what if for your Mount Rushmore.
You know who my biggest what if is involving, man. My favorite wrestler, Bret the Hitman Hart. My biggest what if, gentlemen. What if Bret Hart rejected the WCW deal and made WWF work? That's my biggest what if, because that's a whole butterfly effect type move. Because think about, I mean, not to be morbid, but Owen, like, would he have been involved in what he was involved in, and multiple angles, and how would Sean have been the person to lose the title to Austin the next WrestleMania? Is one of the biggest pieces, because that we've talked about it multiple times, that Bret Hart Austin rivalry, that was one of my personal favorites, and I know a lot of wrestling fans agree with me on that. So when it comes to the main event of WrestleMania 14, would that have been Sean? Would that have been a triple threat of Sean, Bret, Austin? Like, you know, it's just so many what ifs. And obviously, the last point, because this is definitely on the list for us, how much longer would we have gotten Bret Hart? Because obviously the injury against Goldberg happened in WCW. And, you know, it's one of those things where if he's not wrestling Goldberg, how much longer will we have had Bret Hart in the ring? Will we have been able to see Bret Hart versus Brock Lesnar, with a matchup that Bret was absolutely all into? He was like, dude, I would have had the best match ever with Brock Lesnar. And you know Bret would have made Lesnar look like a million bucks. Yeah. So that's getting me thinking, like, when it comes to Austin, like the King of the Ring, where Austin took his ball and went home, let's put Bret in that spot. Bret would have done business, and we would have had Austin for those years. He wouldn't have quit or whatever. Like, it's just making me think like that, you know.
Well, Does he take the baton in 2001, right? Jeez.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if Bret was there, would Bret have been in the spot that they wanted Austin to be in, to which Austin rejected and said, screw you guys, I'm going home? Like, will we have had an extended amount of of Austin being in WWE or WWF at the time?
Well, I'll throw this at you. Think about what we would have gotten when Sean came back with Bret. Because as good as it was before, it would have been better after.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'll throw something else at you. Does WWE create the Attitude Era if Bret stays? Because the whole Attitude Era was built off of that screw job. Bret screwed Bret, kicked it off. The whole Mr. McMahon stuff, that whole rivalry, how hot that got was because of Austin and McMahon.
Right.
You don't get that if Bret stays. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't look different, but you don't get what we got, because the only reason McMahon went down that path is because people rejected his Bret screwed Bret stuff.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. I'm still gonna put it on the Rushmore.
Oh,
but 100%. I definitely respect that point.
Yeah, and I like the fact it's there, but that's what I love the debate, right? I mean, dude, I'll throw another one at you. Bret stays, Sean goes to WCW.
Oh, that could totally happen.
That
Come
would've
on,
been-
like his buddy's already there. Like that's easy.
exactly.
I'm like, dude. I mean,
That
that
whole
whole
DX invasion takes a whole different
in
angle, right?
in some alternate universe, the NWO was Shawn and the Outsiders,
Not Hogan.
not Hogan.
now Hogan to be there too. You had to
Yeah,
have Hogan in the beginning.
Yeah,
that
You'd
would
have
make
to have that in
sense.
the beginning. Yeah,
just
for the turn.
that's about
But
right, man.
man,
Yeah,
I still do think the Attitude Era happens to some extent, just because McMahon's ego and whatnot, and obviously NWO is going to happen because it was just an idea reformulated in a lot of ways. But man, that whole curveball you just threw, that got me thinking, man.
yeah, that would have been crazy.
What are the
man. Now
matchups,
thinking
man?
about it,
Just
yeah.
think about it on both sides, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
nice. So I like that. So we got two heads gone. So I'm gonna bring a different one.
Okay.
Not necessarily something that would have impacted the industry quite to the level, but one of the biggest what ifs to me, it always frustrated me, but I understand it, especially after listening to a podcast where they really broke down why timing. So you kind of talked about timing. What if they came around a few years later? Monty Brown. And when you think about how good he was in a short amount of time, we talk about how Kurt Angle picked it up, Logan Paul's picked it up, how Bad Bunny did his thing, how the certain like Tiffany Stratton, all these others come in and they just boom, they get it. He got it and had charisma out of this world. And just looking at the TNA part, take away any of the stuff he did later with Marcus Corvon, just the TNA part. When I listened to Jarrett talk about it, and they were like, why did you never pull it? He said, look, when we were about to, Christian came in. When we were about to, Kurt came in. He's like, he was a victim of the worst timing in the world. Because you can't, especially when you're on Spike and you have a nationally known name like a Christian or a Kurt Angle come in, you can't pull that trigger right there. But man, to me, that was one of the biggest what ifs. What if he had come around 3 or 4 years later?
Yeah, man.
I mean, just been a little bit behind the curve he was, and allowed him to come in and have matches with Christian, have matches with Kurt, have matches with Samoa Joe, AJ. Oh my gosh. And that pounce, AJ would have flown 14 bros deep, man. And it's like, oh my goodness. To me, that could have been just like the TNA Brock, the TNA Goldberg, the TNA dominant, even though he wasn't huge, but the dominant big man, like legit dominant. And then the matches I think he could have had with Samoa Joe. Oh my goodness.
Been crazy. Yeah.
But to me, that's just one of the biggest what ifs that I love Marcus. I mean, yeah, Marcus. Monty Brown. I loved him. I thought he was great. I loved the pounce. It was different. What he brought was different. His promo style was different.
I loved his promo.
Yeah. It was just, to me, that's just one of the biggest what ifs.
Imagine if he was in the PC.
Man.
Like they would be cooking with fish grease with that dude, man.
Yes.
Yeah. Monty's man.
That's good, man. That's yeah. I just saw some of those pounces like last week. It's wild, man.
Man, and then the fact that he went to WWE, I guess had some personal issues or whatever with his brother or something. I don't know exactly what happened, then just disappeared. Like, you don't hear nothing about that dude.
No.
Yeah.
No
Which is
podcast appearances, no WrestleCons, no nothing.
I remember you talking about Jeff Jarrett actually acknowledging that and talking about it, which is big for like that's big. That's big because that is something that a lot of wrestling fans during that time definitely asked, or they were like, "Dude, like what the hell?" And Jeff Jarrett, you're the face of TNA, Impact Wrestling or whatnot, and a lot of the blame is going to go towards you on that. So that's big of him to actually acknowledge it and go into depth about these are the reasons why. These are the logical reasons why this didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was blatantly clear that this guy had it.
Yeah.
It was like you said, he's a victim of timing, man.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. You bring Christian at that time. That was a huge get.
Yeah.
Huge, because he left on his own. It wasn't like he got released.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kurt, same type of thing, right? So, I mean, and then here you are. You're on that cusp, but you can't, from a business perspective, no matter how bad we wanted to see it as wrestling fans,
Right.
from a business perspective, you can't put. I mean, you couldn't do the same thing with Samoa Joe or AJ or Christopher Daniels or any of those guys. You couldn't put any of them above a Kurt or a Christian at that moment. Christian was hot when he came in. You know, and I mean, he came in for that title. Let's call it what it was.
Man, that's a lot of players too that
Yeah.
had a hand in that, of just stacking that main event, stacking just the top guys, right? That's I never thought about the timing lining up that way.
Do y'all think that was TNA's best chance of not so much overtaking WWE or anything, but like really establishing themselves as the second biggest brand or whatnot?
Under different direction, I can see that happening, right? I mean, there was always a rumor Heyman was going to go, right? But he had all these caveats, right? He had all these preconditions of sorts, and whatever. Or the truth is somewhere in the middle. But I think as long as they were family owned or family directed, even with Anthem, you know, it was. I don't think they exactly knew what they had on their hands.
I think when they got to a certain point, it was just too little, too late. I mean, again, being a mark for the Jarrett podcast, especially when he's broken down that whole stuff. The fact they even made it past 3 years is crazy, because the first investor got caught up in one of those, like, I forget who it was, but Hell South. And if you remember, Hell South was like the Enron. It was the head guy of Hell South was one of the first guys who was going to help out.
Wow.
And all of a sudden they're like,
oh,
yeah. Have you seen the news? Yeah, he's not giving you any money. And so that went away. And so Dixie just happens to be a PR person or something, and just it kind of fell into place.
Wow.
And it was just wild. Like, to hear that whole piece of that story was crazy, because even one guy was lying about how much they were making, and Jeff and apparently Jerry and Jeff didn't even know. And so it was crazy. And then they get to the point where Spike, they were making money on Spike. He said the moment they went to 2 hours, they're making profit. He said we doubled our profit, right? And we were just making really good money. He goes, because we didn't double anything else. They doubled how much they're paying us. We were breaking even already. Now they doubled what they're paying us. We didn't change our talent.
Money.
We didn't change
and
any
they're not traveling.
Yeah.
They got a home. They don't have to set up anything. Yeah, man.
Yeah. It was wild. So, but you just think about that whole time frame. I think, to answer your question, as far as a solid number 2, I think they were a solid 2 for a while. I think that had they allowed Spike, allegedly, Spike wanted some controlling interest, wanted to put some money into it, and own part of it because of what had happened with them in the UFC. Because you remember UFC was on there and then bolted.
Yeah.
So they were like, if we're going to put money into it, because they were, and I think really what hurt TNA, I mean, this is obviously a whole bigger issue, but what hurt TNA is when Dixie wanted to make it WWE Light.
Yep.
And bringing in Hogan and Bischoff and that whole group. I understand why you want the star power.
Right.
I mean, but they made it WWE Light, and they discounted everything else. And I think that's where, for me, even as a growing up a Hogan fan and all that, I remember watching Hogan on some talk show, and he did not acknowledge TNA.
That's
and I'm like, that right there told me all I needed to know of how invested he is in this project.
He's just there for the check.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that it is what it is with that. Rest in peace of Spike. That was one of
I was gonna say
that's one of our favorite channels growing up.
What are they now?
Paramount. They got
Is it
absorbed. I
Paramount?
think
Yeah,
it's Paramount. I mean, it always was, I guess, to some extent. Viacom. It was Viacom, maybe.
Remember that weird era where it was like Esquire Network?
Oh my gosh!
You remember that? Like I
I
want
just
to say I was
remember.
in
Yeah,
college. That was when I was in college or something.
Because it went from
remember
TNN,
that. Then it's
Nashville
like,
Network, to the National Network,
yeah,
to Spike.
Spike, and then it was
yeah.
taken. I want to say it was Esquire after Spike.
Something like that sounds familiar.
Had a lot of
That's
style shows and
hazy memory.
yeah. Those were
Yeah,
But I
fun
mean,
times.
remember that era when it was like we're totally about guys and we're gonna put
that
guy
was all Spike.
programming.
Spike was all about
That's
It's
what
action
it
like
and
was. Yeah,
that was the sell, right?
UFC and
yeah. That's what it
yeah.
was.
Yeah.
That's
But
what it
man,
was.
just think about back to that time frame. If it going back to the whole what if part, fast forward 5 or 6 years, man. Monty Brown could have been huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
All right, so we got our three heads first, right? We got Monty, we got RVD, and we got Bret not leaving. Now we got to talk about the fourth one. So everybody got to bring something. So, Adrian, I'm gonna come to you first. I'm gonna give Adelaide a little bit of extra time to think about
I got
his and
mine.
ponder.
I got mine, but go to
Cool.
Adrian. Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right,
Adrian.
so I was leaning. What if Magnum TA didn't get in the car accident?
Ooh.
I thought that was a big one, and 9 times out of 10 I would go that route. But today I'm going to be messy for content and and honestly tell the truth. But what if Tony Khan had a spine and actually ran AEW the way that he should run? You had CM Punk, you had Cody Rhodes, you had Jade at the very beginning. There are multiple instances of talent that has left to go. The Lucha Brothers, right? You got multiple instances of talent that has left your company for a litany of reasons. And I would, Messy Adrian is going to highlight the CM Punk drama and issue. Because we got to be honest, guys, like the acquisition of CM Punk, that was their shot. That was their shot at really pushing WWE and challenging them. And I just remember the energy and the feelings of a lot of us that were wrestling fans or that are wrestling fans. But I do remember casual fans asking, at least inquiring about it and paying attention somewhat, because they just acquired the guy that left WWE, went to UFC, failed, but he went and competed and did damn near everything other than WWE. And they brought him back. And they had such a huge opportunity. And now looking back at a number of the decisions, a number of instances where Tony could have stood in between a couple of the talent having issues with each other. Eddie Kingston and what's my guy, Sammy Guerrero, having that issue to the point of Andrade and Sammy saying, "Hey, when I see you, I'm gonna fight you," like that kind of crazy stuff. If Tony had a spine, that would have been a squash, and Andrade would have been. It should ideally still be an all elite wrestling. If Tony Khan had a spine and not let online chatter, journalists, Eric Bischoff get in his head, he should be running. He should be running a top notch company, and I just think that today's AEW is a shell of what it was initially. Because the first 2 years of AEW, even if you're a WWE fan, like most of us are, we were at least paying attention on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's to the point where if you're not watching a YouTube clip of it or hearing something that went viral, you're probably not locked in and watching it. And viewership and attendance shows that, in my opinion. You know, if you're an AEW fan and you're still locked in, credit to you, shout out to you. But like, numbers don't lie. And that's my what if. My what if Tony Khan actually had a backbone, if he had a spine to actually run that company the way he should have run it.
Yeah. I mean, you made a point there that resonates with me more because we've had these conversations before, you know. But I'm thinking of an era where those first 2 years were this grace period, right?
Yeah.
You're still talking about an era where Vince is still running things.
Yep.
And fans are fed up with nonsensical, lead nowhere storylines that insult your intelligence. We've said that time and time again, right? And here's this breath of fresh air, right? And here's Punk to put the exclamation mark on it, to say, this is where the big boys play, as Kevin Nash once said, right?
Right.
And that's where it somewhat ended. That MJF feud was great, right? It was like, wow, 2 Titans, this is great, this is amazing. But it was a lot resting on the laurels of these superstars with an anti-WWE agenda. Because the biggest pops were always denigrating the competition. They weren't building up your own company. I mean, that promo, that one of the bigger MJF Punk promos, that one of the biggest pops is them mentioning The Miz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And in a put down, when we've talked about how great Miz is and like what an asset he is, and can fit in anywhere. So it's interesting how those good graces that we had for the company just died out and lined up and timed up with the Triple H takeover, right? With the Shawn Michaels takeover. That's not a coincidence, right? We can acknowledge that. I'm not going to say a what if Triple H never took over and Vince is still there. But yeah, I don't know what the AEW looks like, because they're going to keep playing that game of we are the alternate. But in the reality of the world we live in, did he ever move past that? And I think that's where it's harder to be a fan when they can put on great PWG style pay-per-views. They just had one recently. They knock it out of the park every time there's a pay-per-view. I don't need to have much background. I can watch the show for what it is and enjoy it.
Right.
But it's that week to week, like you said, where those Wednesdays, at least for me, were pretty must-see for a while. Yeah. Right? I didn't want to miss it. I wanted to see my, Lucha Bros are my dudes, so I wanted to see them in action. But I wanted to see everybody else, right? I wanted to see, even like an Alley Cat, even like a Butcher, like that whole team was pretty unique to me. And they were just introducing new teams that had been kind of, bouncing around on the indies, maybe TNA. And you had a solid cast there. We can argue for some of the players there, but that it wasn't for a lack of talent, right?
No.
It was for a lack of direction. And we can all say that pretty definitively. Now, to your end is not that we're going to talk about what does the future look like, but I'm curious if he'd hired a booker from the beginning and said, here's my vision for what this company is, but I want you to be the bad guy, so to speak. I'm still the owner. I'm still behind the scenes, but you're going to be my filter. You're going to make some decisions. And if things should go wrong, you can take the hit, basically. And I'm sure there's plenty of people in the industry, plenty of former pro wrestlers that will happily do that for the amount of money that he's probably showing out.
But see, that's part of the what if of if he had a backbone. That's for all of what we can say about Vince McMahon, and we've talked about it ad nauseum.
Yeah.
horrible human being, horrible decisions he's made all throughout his. But on a professional level, you have so many of these past wrestlers that said he was the boss. And we knew that. And there was no question about it. There was no dissension in the locker room or anyone saying, hey, we're going to say screw Vince. No, the hell you're not.
You're not getting on TV if you say that.
You're not going to get on TV. You may not make catering. Like, it could get spooky. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was clearly the boss. So that just goes along with what if this dude had a backbone to really run the company?
Yeah.
You know? And and that's not for everyone. Like, being a leader is not for everyone. Being the boss is not for everyone. I've seen it all of us have seen it on a professional level. Like, some people that you would think are going to be an awesome manager, awesome boss, awesome supervisor, they can't do it. They just don't have it in them. And I just question whether or not Tony actually has it in him. I don't think I don't question it anymore. I doubt it. I highly doubt Tony is capable of being. You don't have to be a cutthroat person to be a leader.
No.
Just have some gumption about what you're saying, and when you make a decision, that's what it is, and we're going to live with it. We're going to live and die by it because I'm the leader. This is my deal, and I don't see that of Tony.
It's interesting the way you presented that about the backbone, and I know where you're going with it. I don't know if I look at it as a backbone per se, and I don't think that I don't know if he's leading or not. Here's where I go with this. He doesn't want to lead. He wants to be in the weeds. He wants to be that front end person. He wants to be creative. He wants to book it. He doesn't want to be you know, who can I think about? Other Khan. I can't even think of his freaking name.
Oh, Nick
Khan. You know, would be Nick Khan, who's allowing people to do what they have to do. He wants to be in the weeds, like Shawn. Even deeper than Triple H. He wants to be in the weeds like a Shawn. He wants to be Paul Heyman. That's what he wants to be. And we know Paul Heyman didn't know how to lead from the top, but he also had everything with him, right? Everything was on his shoulders. And I feel like when I look at Tony Khan, I agree. Like, what if he didn't repeat the mistakes of Jim Crockett Promotions? What if he didn't repeat the mistakes of Dixie Carter and TNA? It's exactly what he's doing. Go back to Jim Crockett Promotions. Jim Crockett Promotions had money, and who did he put in charge? Dusty. And let's call it what it is. Dusty ran it into the ground. You've heard story after story after story. As creative as he was, financially, he ran it into the ground and pushed himself and all that kind of stuff, to the point where, what if when he started AEW, he didn't hand EVPs over to current talent? What if he said, hey, Chris Jericho, I need you to help us get launched, but now I need you behind the scenes because Chris is creative. What if he did go to a Jeff Jarrett who understood that whole part, not as a talent, but to be behind the scenes? The biggest star they had when they started was Jim Ross. What if I did go to Jim Ross and say, hey, run this behind the scenes? Dixie tries her best to get her to run TNA. So I agree with what you're saying. I know where you're going with it, right? What if he ran it better, no better term, like Vince, like, except being all in the weeds, right? What if he stepped back and ran it from a 50,000 foot view? And it's not unlike, to parallel it, the Dallas Cowboys under Jerry Jones. When he allowed Jimmy Johnson to do his job, they won Super Bowls.
They were winning.
But as soon as he said, you know what, I need to take this over, and Jimmy Johnson left, and then Barry Switzer left. Kind of like Cody did. And then it went down. Didn't matter who they brought in. They bring in superstars. Doesn't matter. They bring in CM Punk. Doesn't matter. Why? Because they allow it to die. So it's, I mean, I like that what if. That's a very interesting one, but it's one we could debate about for a long time for sure. But and I think the thing is, wish they would. Like I guess one of my biggest frustrations, I'm like, you're sitting there with the Jeff Jarrett who knows how to run a company
Right.
and knows how to do creative, and you brought him in to help run house shows that just never took off, right? But because of collision or whatever, but he understands the inner workings. You had Jim Ross, who understands that inner workings. You had Tony Schiavone, who's an executive with WCW and NWA. I'm like, you got talent around you.
You've paid for more than enough knowledge to be around you.
Yeah.
Now, I will give him credit. Like the shift or the pivot of the AEW live television experience is a lot better. It's no longer these larger arenas that they were shooting a little too high for. Now you're talking about these more quaint theaters and smaller spaces, which welcomes, their fan base, and it makes for a more engaging television experience because you're seeing a full area of fans being hype and all of that stuff, and they're still working things out about it, but that's way better than what they were doing months ago. Like the thing 6 months ago was what AEW, people showing up to those shows taking pictures of the the hard camera side, like of the empty spaces, and that was the thing. We don't see that as often now. Like I don't know if that just isn't in my algorithm, but 6 months ago, every Thursday, that was the thing. Like everybody was taking pictures of LOL, AEW, like that sort of thing. We're not seeing that anymore. And I mean, it makes more sense now.
But you wouldn't have to do that pivot had he done what you talked about in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
Because let's just use Atlanta. State Farm Arena, which is where the Hawks play. What, 17,000? When they first came here, they pretty much sold it out, came close to selling it out.
First time,
and that was
we
State
were there.
Farm.
Yeah.
Not long after that, they were at Gas South, which is where our Double-A ice hockey team plays from the ECHL. Maybe 11,000 at most, and not even
10,
3/4 full.
Yep.
Then they went there again, and now the most recent time they went to the place where our WNBA team plays, and that holds 3,000.
Right.
And they pretty much sold it out. And then most recently they went to Athens. Even after that, they went to Athens, which holds about 2,000.
Where the hockey
and I know
team
that
plays.
one, and that was Collision. I know they didn't sell that one out.
No.
So going back, yes, I agree. Make the pivot because of what's happening. But if you really sit back and look, they should have never have had to make that pivot.
Oh, definitely. Agree. Like if the momentum that they were on the first 2 years of AEW, this shouldn't even be a conversation.
No.
Like the thought of them having a show with over 2,000 people, that wouldn't be the case. Because again, not to just say because they had Cody Rhodes, because they had CM Punk. I'm not saying because of that. I'm saying if that company was ran by someone who actually put people in the places that they needed to be in, told people who were on BS that, yo, you're on BS. And hell, if it's Tony Khan having a backbone and firing CM Punk after the first incident, what is the direction of AEW? As an overall product, because I think we're at a point where AEW is trying to gain some momentum, and they just finished having a show and they're gaining some momentum going into All In Texas. But it's All In Texas. They came from Wembley. Like to go from Wembley and that grand spectacle to going to Arlington. Like That's a fall off, and that's the only person to point at for, in my opinion, is Tony.
Yeah,
through his actions.
Let's use the backbone piece. In all honesty, and I was very critical of CM Punk during that time frame, but I'd have fired the Bucks. You're EVPs. That's not acceptable. Talent is a contractor. Talent is what they are, right? Not justifying. But if you parallel that and Triple H got into it like that with somebody that's talent, you think he has a job tomorrow? Ain't no way. No way.
And to be honest, I mean, it goes back to the point that Adrian's making, right? It's we have one person that can rein everybody in, right? One decider ultimately, and he's not Vince, and he will never be Vince, and no one will ever be Vince because he ruled with an iron grip. So to that end, right, here you have these major players, but ultimately, look, from the get-go, who did he sign? He signed the hottest indie stars in the world, right? Guys that I'm not going to get ahead of myself because this is going to be my other my other piece to the competition today. But there's this idea that he's trying, and I'll play a little devil's advocate because I also want to call a spade when I see it. He hired their best production guy, Mike Mansouri.
Yeah.
Right? Recently. And you could see a shift in production. It's a lot tighter. It's much more well lit. Transitions are better. Cuts are better. The cohesiveness of the show just looks a lot better. And he was the next guy up to Kevin Dunn. Someone who the only reason he didn't stick around because they didn't know when Kevin was going to go. And Kevin goes when Vince goes, right? So all these pieces are aligning, right? That's just a production piece, right? So I can appreciate that. What we're talking about is from a managerial personnel piece. And to your point, to everybody's point here that we're making is there is no authority figure. There's no JR, VP of talent. There's no, even Christopher Daniels, poor Christopher Daniels is put in a weird position there. The guy's a sweetheart. The guy's amazing. Shout out to, one of the greats. But you can't put a loaded situation to that guy because he's one of the boys, right? He's one of the guys that Punk liked, I'm sure, or probably dislikes now. But you're right. I think from the get-go, people were given too much authority, whereas it should have ended with. It started with Tony and ended with Tony.
Yeah.
And to this day, I don't know what that looks like today. I don't know if that's still ongoing or if there's been some lessons learned from the past.
Seems like it. We haven't heard too much like issues and drama in the back.
Right.
And speaking of issues and drama, and this will be my last point and we move on, but like after Punk and the Bucks had their issue, a boss with a backbone would have forced both of them in the same room and said, you know what? We're going to figure this out and we're going to make money off of this because the internet already knows what happened.
Yeah.
That was, if they would have run a program, all of us would have been locked in on that. We would have. No matter if you loved CM Punk or if you disliked CM Punk, no matter if you loved the Young Bucks or disliked the Young Bucks, we would have all been locked in to that story, to that journey. CM Punk versus Omega, CM Punk and FTR versus the Bucks and Omega. Like it's a whole year of top level main event storylines that could have stemmed from that incident, that very real incident. And a boss without a backbone, who I'm suggesting Tony Khan, let that fall through the gap.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been the modern day Edge and Hardy.
Yep.
I mean, we all watched that just thinking, oh, they're gonna kill each other. Like we're kind of hoping for it. Let's call it what it is, right? And we're all like, oh, yeah, they're actually go off. They're gonna go off. and they teased it. I mean, man, they teased it, and they went off, right? They would hit hard or whatever. Same type of thing right there could have happened, but man, that's an interesting what if. That gives us a lot of conversation. Now I feel like mine still has nothing compared to that, but mine's another. So just another TNA one.
Okay.
And I kind of had two, but what if? And this goes back to a talent. Fast forward 10 years. What if ODB was today?
Wow.
No comedy crap with Eric and all that. I mean, what if she was in WWE today?
Hell, if she was in TNA today.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Their knockouts division.
Could you imagine her and
what
Jordan
a character,
Grace?
man. What a whole
Her,
package.
I mean, and whatever. To me, there's something about her, and I didn't love her at the time. Like, I didn't appreciate her until later. But it's something like, it's kind of like I use Punk because I don't understand Punk's connection to the crowd. And that doesn't mean I dislike him. I just don't understand it. There's just something about him that he is connected to people. People believe in him. Jeff Hardy's the same way. There's very few talents that just have a connection, an organic, natural connection. And Punk, if you look at him, he's not like your everyday dude or something. Like it's just different, right? And talking about AEW, he comes out, people lose their mind, they're crying, all that kind of stuff. For 7 years, people are chanting the dude's name. And it's like, and then Jeff Hardy, no matter what you do, he just chance after chance after chance, people are just behind him. ODB had that same type of charisma to me that just people loved her. Even when they tried to have her as a heel, it just didn't work. Like people just loved her. And to me, that type of charisma in today's women's environment, whether it's AEW, whether it's TNA, whether it's WWE, or NXT or whatever, oh my gosh. To me, not just the banger matches. Like I feel like she would be damn close to the face of the freaking division. I mean, tell me one person on that roster she would not have a good feud with. And that's talking too. We talk about the talkers.
Man.
And that girl could talk.
Yeah.
I mean,
the testament to her, right? And the impression she made too, because she had a look, she had a clear personality, right? Easily identifiable. She had all the elements of we look for in a star, really, and she did the comedy piece and she did it well too.
Yeah. Very talented.
She could pivot that way too. Man, that's a good one. That's a good pull.
Man. Yeah, just imagine her and Rhea going back and forth, or her and Bianca going back and forth. Like that would be fun.
Throw all the knockouts in there and throw a Gail Kim in there.
I mean, you start thinking about, you could take that whole knockout division to put them in there today.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
But you just think about, to me, I look at Kane this way. I look at Kane can be comedy. He could be on them with a mask, no mask, all kinds of different things. And he could be comedy next week. And then next week, he could be the freaking big red monster and going for the title. And nobody blinks an eye. Like, yep, he's just, that's him. And yep, that's her. Like, she could do that comedy. She could be hilarious, or she could be just straight funny. I mean, she could fit into a Judgment Day. Then she could turn right back around, fit into a New Day, and she could fit right back around and be in something else, right? I mean, because she's that. To me,
New Day would be hilarious, man.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But it would work.
Yeah.
And you can't say that about everybody. I was just like, man, if I could just plop her, bring her into the DeLorean, and bring her up to today, man.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Good one. Definitely. What you got, Elite?
And I feel like I had all these good ideas, and now I'm like they're all enveloped in other pieces here. So originally I thought I was going to be real simple, be like, what if the Bucks and Kenny sign with WWE? You don't get, But I'm actually going to go back, and this is a purely sentimental pick, and you'll get it, especially Adrian will get it because it has a unique point in how we met. 2017, New Japan is at its height. They're doing their thing. Obviously, AJ's on his way out, Nakamura's on his way out, but they've established themselves as this amazing international brand for the hardcores, not for a general audience, for the hardcores. But if you look at that roster, it's a modern Hall of Fame roster, the 2017-2018 roster. What if they do pull the trigger and find a TV deal before AEW exists? So take all that talent, right? Maybe rebrand it. New Japan doesn't roll off the tongue to American audiences. It's going to be weird. But I don't know, rebrand it with the same talent, New Japan of the USA. I don't know. There's people that are more creative than I am. But you effectively have a New Japan-backed sports-style pro wrestling company with American stars that they were already capitalizing on, and that the hardcores were already behind, down to the fact that at that show, that first Long Beach set of shows, who's there? You have a whole cast of characters, including Cody, right? You have Stone Cold visiting. You have Jim Ross on commentary.
Yep.
And who is first row already thinking of starting a wrestling company? Tony Khan. Right? So you had this whole crossroads of where the future of wrestling that was not WWE was going to go. And in retrospect, we can point a lot of fingers, and I know there's better historians than I am, but I know that some version of the story goes that New Japan was doing so much due diligence and just the Japanese style, you take your time, you bide your time. They never pulled the trigger fast enough. And here we are today, right? They're amazing. They're still going to be the Japanese institution, but those inroads to America never quite made their way the way they could have. So thoughts on that? Thoughts on what could have been New Japan era 2017, 2018?
I like that suggestion because 2017 they were on fire, bro. They were on fire. Hell, I flew out to Long Beach, and that's where we met for that show, and we had a hell of a time, man. Like, they really did have the attention of the wrestling fan, and it was spreading toward some casuals. I'm not going to say they had all the casuals' attention.
Height of the Bullet Club, right?
Yeah. Largely due to the Bullet Club, because you had those shirts at Spencer's. Like, that's mainstream. That's our Hot Topic. Sorry. It was Hot Topic. And out west, they were selling out. Like, it was hot.
Selling out here too.
Yeah.
I remember they released them here at the Mall of Georgia. I went, and I could not find a Cody shirt or a Bullet Club shirt. That's the two I was trying to get. I couldn't find them for nothing.
But yeah, it's credit to them, and it's like you said, they definitely tried. You could tell that they were trying to set pieces in place to really establish themselves. Hell, making the dojo out there, like announcing that was big. Like, we all thought, oh man, New Japan is about to be here in the States and be consistent. I honestly think the pandemic, like, really, really screwed them. Because by 2020, they were still trying to get stuff going. And I want to say I came back out there a couple years later, like 2019 maybe.
Yep.
So momentum was still there. It was just once the pandemic happened,
it was different.
Everything shut down, and travel and all that stuff. So that kind of screwed them.
I'll argue too, those 1-year contracts are terrible.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, so you think about they introduced that U.S. title. Cody had it. They didn't do much with it. Cody was on that NWA show when NWA was getting pretty hot. He was the NWA champion and U.S. champion at the same time. They had an opportunity, I think, to try to help promote with NWA. Now NWA is not WWE, they're not TNA at the time, any of that kind of stuff, right? But you needed an inroad here. To your
For
point,
sure.
you can't call it
100%.
New Japan. It's not going to work.
Right.
You can't have all Japanese wrestlers. It's not going to work. I know people used to get pissed off at Vince. Oh, that's why he doesn't want to use certain people. They don't speak English. Guess what? It don't work. Certain ones can kind of pull it off, right? But as a general rule, it's not going to work. You got to sprinkle in that other, whatever. And that's okay. You can have the two different things, right? You can have New Japan pure per se in Japan, and then have an American version. I think it was there, but to your point, Adelaide, they were so slow in going for it, right? Talent was here. You could see it when they went and did the first All In, right? Talent was here.
Oh man!
Had they truly partnered with an ROH or truly partnered with a TNA and really partnered, not just a joint show, but a true partnership. That's an interesting what if, because we may not have an All Elite, right? I mean, it may be gone. Or now ROH could have been that company that was the Japanese American company. You know what I mean?
Tony would have put money into that
There
venture
you go.
and
There
be the backer, the financial backer of this New Japan USA venture. Like the guy in the background, and we don't hear from him, we don't see him, and it's run a different way. Like that. That's huge.
But also, I think there's another part to that. It goes back to what you spoke about with TK. New Japan. This is me. I enjoy watching New Japan, but to get the bigger audience, you definitely had to put more story into it. You have to put more episodic, stuff together. You just have to. And that's just the American way. I mean, quote unquote, it is what it is. And if you're not going to do that, there's only so much you're going to be able to get there. And man, that's an interesting what if though, because I had always read that they were just stuck in how they wanted to do things. And it would be like going
that's
here.
Probably the closest to the truth.
Yeah. It's kind of like going from here, going over there and doing what we want to do, right? Didn't work. They do business different. And it's just different.
And
they're super loyal to a fault almost, because they were loyal to ROH even when they got screwed.
Yeah, that's true. I'll give them credit for how they were trying to produce the Access TV shows.
That's right.
Weekly, that was a thing for a while, and it was interesting. But like speaking from someone who ran a restaurant, and I would have it on television, people would watch it in passing, but wrestling only takes you so far. Good, solid wrestling only takes you so far. People, or at least Americans, I would more so say, we need more than that. Like you can't just present something to me and say, "Hey, these guys wrestle really, really, really good." Like they're not going to be interested. They're going to lose the attention of a majority of us. That's why you need characters. That's why you need those promo segments and that sort of thing. And even though people will say, that's WWE stuff, that's the reason why WWE is the biggest company in the industry.
Yep.
It's entertainment.
Exactly. All right, so we have our three to debate about. We've got the New Japan. What if they had pulled the trigger and really, really, truly went after the American market in 2017, 2018? What if ODB was relocated to today? And what does that look like? And then what if TK had a spine or a true leadership and ran the company like a corporation, right? And kind of ran it as a CEO as opposed to in the weeds. I mean, I think all three very different. Y'all's two are a little bit more similar than mine. But I think it's interesting. It's like all good what ifs. So which one do we put out there?
I mean, not to be a hater, but I think I know which one I can go with. Because look, we want to see wrestling be successful. I don't think I sit here and I was a diehard AEW guy. I'm not gonna lie. I loved it.
Yeah.
First 2 years, man, probably even a little more than that.
Yeah.
But it left a bad taste in my mouth. Everything. Not just one thing, one instance, one. And I'm not saying I don't watch, but you wonder, in a world where there's that much money to be made, how much money was left on the table? And if we're in the business of wrestling, right, that should have been the main motivator. There shouldn't be these peripheral talks like, oh, well, you guys are on the come up, you're a young company. They still are making money, right? But who's to say they couldn't have been in a much better financial position just by the fact of having someone put their foot down and say, stop that nonsense.
Right.
You're on a contract. Get out there, put my product in the ring, and get over it. That's it. Egos are egos. You're going to have them in every industry.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter. That's it. Yeah. Easy. I mean, it sounds easy, but
No, for sure. No, I absolutely agree, because that's the whole point of me saying, what if Tony had a backbone? Like, all of us were cheering for AEW for whatever reason. If you were tired of WWE and I just need something else to watch, or most of us, we saw the people that were involved in the company and we were cheering for them.
Hell yeah.
I think all three of us, we were all cheering for Cody. We all enjoyed the Bucks' trajectory, as in the things that they did to actually make some noise within that industry, outside of that industry. Those guys had built that by themselves. Make no mistake about it. The Bucks are as self-built as anyone in the world. And you may not like them now or whatever, but you got to respect the hustle. The things that they did, next level. And we were all cheering for them. And same thing with Kenny Omega. All those years of New Japan matches that he had, his trajectory in New Japan, goated type deal. So we were all cheering for all of them. And then you say you're hiring all of these independent acts that a lot of us regionally loved and enjoyed. And you're saying, hey, you're giving Darby Allin a job on national television. That's awesome. I want to see him succeed. MJF, we want to see him succeed. And I think he is succeeding at their current level. But it's just Tony's failures. A lot of it's attributed to his lack of leadership. Just as simple as that. And it's having a backbone also is, how do you handle feedback or criticism? That's one thing that's kind of lost me with Tony Khan. If you say anything about AEW that's not glowing, then you're the enemy. It's pretty much just you're shunned and all that. Part of having a backbone is, somebody says something that you don't agree with, you're like, oh, okay, cool. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm going to keep doing my thing, but I want you to keep giving me money. That's part of having a backbone. And I don't see that. Again, I don't want to make this podcast about me ripping Tony Khan or anything like that, but that's just my assessment of him from a person that's been a leader in multiple levels of his profession. I don't see that of him. It's multiple examples.
Yeah, I think my big thing is I pull for AEW so hard. I rock my AEW shirts. I had an AEW hat. Now I won't wear it. I'll wear one of the wrestler shirts.
Yeah.
Right? I'll wear one of their hats.
Yeah.
But I won't wear AEW because I don't identify with the brand like I did before. Like in the beginning, I was like, yes, we're a movement. We're gonna get this thing going. I'm gonna support this brand everywhere I can. And I remember going to, I guess we were in New York, and I had an AEW shirt on, and they were like, oh, you gonna be able to wear that tonight? Because I think we go to NXT or whatever. And it was just like, oh, I'm wearing it. And it was kind of, I had so many comments about it. But I wore it proudly, right? And I wasn't trying to be a rebel against WWE or anything. It was just like I'm
Right.
just supporting,
Right.
and it was just cool, right? And it was just like it is what it is. But now, no, I won't wear that. It's almost embarrassing, to be honest. What the product has become to me, like even watching the other night, I watched Jamie Hayter. I didn't watch the whole pay per view, so I'm like I did.
Right.
I watched the Jamie Hayter and Mercedes match, which was excellent. Then I started watching the main event, and here we go with staple guns and stuff. That's not my thing.
Right.
So I'm done. Turn
Right.
it off.
Yeah.
Don't even care. And it's like, and that's okay. And I'm not saying this before people lose their minds. I'm not saying this against the match. It's not for me.
Definitely.
And that's not what I want to watch. So because I feel like there's a time and a place for it. Street fights don't bother me. Hardcore matches don't bother me. Every single pay per view, every single time. Come on. I can go back and watch JCP, and it's the same thing. They can go out. You go back and watch the original couple of Starcades, and it was blood after blood after blood. At some point, you just don't care, right? So, I mean, for me, the product's just not overall for me anymore, and that's disappointing. I remember watching it in the beginning, and it was like watching a party. It was like, man, I want to be there. Like when they came to town, it's like I want to go, and it's like I gotta be there. It's just they look like they're having so much fun. Now, dude, that's NXT. NXT is a party. I mean, it's like they're having fun. WWE, you see a lot of these now. They're having fun, and the AEW fans to me are not having as much fun. Now they're in a little bit smaller venues. They look like they're having a good time. But yeah, I mean, going back to the whole Mount Rushmore, I have no issue going with that down that path because it is something that would change the entire industry. Quick question though on the what if he did something now, is it too late? And the
Not at
reason I
all.
say this, here's why I say that. TNA took a lot of turns back and forth and all that. It's taken them 20 years to now to where they're starting. I would say 15 years at least since they were this hot. At least. So it's taken them 15 years to get back. If we won't even call it back, because their ratings aren't even close. And I know ratings are different, but their partnership with WWE is helping, but TNA is hot again. It's taken a long time to get there. Can AEW turn it around? If so, how long does it take? And do they ever achieve the level of success that they could have achieved in theory had this what if happened early?
Ali, you want to take that first?
I want to address it as someone that I'm like Mulder and Scully. I want to believe. I want to believe. I bought my ticket to episode 300. I'm gonna be there. I'm still giving them my money in some ways. So I'm like, it's not dead yet to me, and it won't be because there's so many invested. But to your end, I'm gonna use that as a jumping off point. Look, there's a lot of trash TV in every pro wrestling company. Go back to some New Japan stuff. I mean, yeah, I'm living off the hype of the years that I told you, but there's some trash there. There's some trash in WWE.
Absolutely.
Very recent, within the last decade. There's some terrible stuff in TNA, right? There was some terrible stuff in WCW. So, at its worst, I still think AEW is not that bad ultimately. I think it just needs better direction. And I think that's the heart of the matter here is we want to see it succeed. I'm just afraid that someone like Tony Khan is so caught up in trying to eclipse WWE that it's like a greyhound chasing a robotic rabbit. They're going to keep going, they're full of energy. They got all the resources, right? They're never going to get there, right? And I'm not saying he should admit defeat and say, we're number 2, we're okay with that. I don't think that's also like a great way to conduct business. But there has to be some admission of saying, that's Coca-Cola and we're this other thing.
That's it.
And that's okay. Right. Because I don't always want Coca-Cola. I don't always want vanilla ice cream. Right. Sometimes something else is cool too.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it's going to take to get to that point. I don't know if it's someone in his ear. I don't know if it means him potentially getting married. I don't know his personal relationship, a child in his life. I don't know. Something that will shift his whole, view on the world is what it's going to take, I think.
I feel that. Well, to answer your question, Greg, I don't think it's too late for AEW. And if your question, you said how soon, I could see this summer with the right decisions when you're talking about some of the stories that are coming out of this most recent pay-per-view. You have a huge opportunity going into All In where you have someone like a Hangman Page who's always been around as one of your top guys. Now he has a shot to being the guy against, even though a lot of us, we don't care for the Death Riders. Like, according to Tony, the metrics say otherwise. People pay attention to it. If they're hate watching it, that they're doing something, because the Death Riders and John Moxley actually gets the attention of a lot of these fans. And they have a huge opportunity at that main event. You're talking about Mercedes. A lot of people are sour with her creative direction. She has a huge opportunity to shut up a lot of people with a good story. And it's American wrestling when it comes down to it. I don't think good wrestling is enough. You need stories to push it over the top. And we got to be honest, we've been taking AEW to task in this episode, but we got to take WWE to task somewhat of their recent storytelling and development. Some of them are falling flat. Like, it's a number of people questioning, should John Cena really have turned heel? Because what they're giving us right now is not what we thought John Cena heel turn would actually be. Like, it's kind of lackluster. So it's all about timing, right? WWE's kind of dropping the ball on some of these stories. Now AEW has a huge opportunity to actually invest in some of those stories and get our attention again. Darby Allin, he just finished Mount Everest, his venture there. He's on his way back. Like, if you're into Darby Allin, like, I cheer for Darby Allin because I like him. Him coming back is going to be huge for me because I'm going to pay attention because I like Darby. But storytelling, AEW has a huge opportunity. And with the production in, with them going to smaller venues, it's looking cool again. And that's the key. As long as it's looking cool, as long as you're giving me good stories, we know it's going to be some really good wrestling involved with some of the players there. You can crank that back up, man. Like, I don't think it's going to overtake WWE by any means, but it could be that great alternative, which is what we were looking for when it was created.
No, I agree. I just had to challenge you guys to see how long does it take? I think it takes for them to get back to where they were. Say the first 18 months. I think it would take 2 years, 3 years.
Wow, that's faster than I thought you might say, actually.
Minimum. But I think the key there is you have to get confidence from people like us again.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I can come watch it, but for me to shell out $50 to watch the PLE, or I'm sorry, pay-per-view, whatever they want to call theirs, I don't know.
Right.
Whatever we call these things, depending on who we're talking about. for me to shell it out at this stage, it ain't happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for anybody. So this is not that has nothing to just do with AEW. That's New Japan. That's TNA. Anybody,
Right.
because that's not the model anymore, right? So now,
Mm-hmm.
for me to like WWE, I would shell it out for Mania because it's Mania.
Right.
But beyond that, for me to shell out $50 for something, it better have my attention.
Mm-hmm.
And AEW doesn't have my attention like that. So could they? Yeah, I wish they would. I truly wish they would. I wish that I would want to rush home to watch it on Wednesdays. I watch highlights. That's it. But yeah, it's the biggest what if that's still sitting there of the ones we just talked about. That can still happen, which I think is why it should go on the Mount Rushmore, and hopefully one day it comes off of our Mount Rushmore.
Man.
Yeah.
To where it's not a what if, it's it happened.
Agreed.
But I think this has been a fun episode. I like these Mount Rushmore ones. I think they're something different
for us to talk about.
negative,
guys. I don't want to bring stuff down. I just want to be honest about.
We're still rooting for everybody.
What it is, man.
And I think here's how I look at AEW and TNA at one point and WWE at one point. To be honest with you, and WCW. But since we're talking about the stepchild right now of AEW, it's like that kid that you just look at, whether he's on your football team, on your baseball team, in your classroom, whether you've managed these people. I mean, we're all in leaderships in different areas in our lives that has potential. Like you sit down, you have that one-on-one with him. Like, God, I wish they would just get it. I mean, it's sitting right there. Like they're on the cusp of greatness. They're on the cusp of straight A's. They're on the cusp of that next level. Whether it's a cook or a server or whatever it may be, but they just won't do that extra thing. And that to me is AEW. It's like you as a boss are like, please, come on, just do this, and it's going to take you to that next level. It's going to get you break through this wall, and they just refuse, and it just drives you crazy. That to me is AEW. It's like a bust in the draft, like a Jamarcus Russell or somebody that's like, dude, you have all the talent in the world. Apply this much of it, just this much.
Yeah,
you don't have to apply that much. It's just a little bit, and you could be huge. And it's just like, come on. I think that's the biggest frustration for me with AEW. But all right, so our Mount Rushmore, we got the what if of Monty Brown, the what if the screw job never happens, and Bret stays, and then the what if RVD and Sabu never get pulled over, and and you know what's interesting about that? If they got pulled over today, it wouldn't be a big deal at all.
At all.
Yeah.
At all.
It wouldn't. It
not
wouldn't
at
hit
all.
anything. Yeah.
Not at all. But what if that doesn't happen, and then we put in the AEW? So that's our Mount Rushmore of what ifs. Hey y'all, pop down there in the comments what's your biggest what if. There's so many more out there. I mean, there's so many like you mentioned the Magnum TA one. I mean, how big could that have been? What if Tully never comes back? What if Tully comes back with Arn into the Horsemen? What if they never leave? What if JCP doesn't sell out? What if Starrcade 87 is the true pay-per-view and doesn't have Survivor Series up against it? I mean, there's so many things that are sitting there. And it's like, man, I would love to see these timelines. Like, I wish I could be the Flash and go to Flashpoint and see all these different timelines and see, man, there'd be some crazy stuff out there. I mean, what if Hogan never leaves AWA? I mean, that's a huge one, y'all.
That's crazy.
Because that's a trickle down effect of 90% of the AWA went to WWF. So yeah, this was a fun one. I appreciate you guys joining today on our Rushmores of Wrestling episode. A little bit different than our normal Talk Them Into the Building, where we talk about only the promos. But don't worry, we'll be right back to that here soon. But thank you again for Ida Lead, For Adrian, I'm Greg. Make sure you follow us, like, subscribe, intothebuilding.com, and we will see you on the flip side, y'all. Peace.